I called my parents, crying, begging for help because my daughter needed emergency surgery. But they said they were too busy decorating for their cat's birthday. I didn't even cry. I just hung up and smiled. Weeks later they came to ask me for money. I smiled again. But this time my son spoke, and his words made their hands shake. I stood outside the emergency room, staring blankly at the red, "Do not enter" sign, trying to stop my hands from shaking. My daughter, my little Emma, was inside, hooked up to machines, surrounded by nurses and doctors. They told me she needed surgery. Urgent. Life-saving. Immediate. I felt like the floor was giving way beneath my feet. I checked my purse. I had just over $200. Insurance would take time. Time we didn't have. I looked at the nurse and asked if I could pay in parts. She gave me that look, kind but helpless. I knew what it meant. I stepped outside, clutching my phone. There was only one option left. Called my parents. The phone rang 3 times before Mom picked up. I could hear music in the background, maybe jazz. There was a strange kind of laughter behind her voice. "Hello," she said, sounding slightly distracted. "Mom," my voice cracked. "It's Emma. She's in the hospital. The doctor says she needs emergency surgery. I don't have enough right now. Can you help me? Please." There was a pause. I heard her cover the receiver and whisper something to Dad. Then I heard him chuckle. "Oh, honey," she said with that light tone she always used when she wasn't really listening. "That's really unfortunate. But we're kinda busy right now." "Busy?" I blinked. "Mom, I'm at the hospital." Emma could. I stopped. I couldn't even say the word. "We're decorating. For Muffin's birthday," she said cheerfully. "Muffin?" I whispered. "Our cat," she laughed. "She's turning 5 today. We're throwing a little party. Balloons, streamers. I even baked a little fish-shaped cake." I didn't speak. I couldn't. "I'm sure Emma will be okay," she added. "She's strong, right? Maybe you could call someone else. We're kind of in the middle of things." Then Dad's voice cut in from the background. "Tell her we're not a bank." I heard her laugh again, almost like it was a joke. My throat burned. I wanted to scream. But all I said was, "Okay." Then I hung up. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood there in the hospital corridor, phone in hand, and let the silence crash down over me. People rushed by, nurses shouting codes, someone wheeling a stretcher. The world kept spinning while mine stood still. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. My hands were numb. My legs felt like glass. I felt hollow. Not just because they said no, but because they said it so easily. Like I was a stranger. Like my daughter didn't matter. They were busy with a cat's birthday. That's all I could hear in my head. A cat's birthday. I slid down to the floor, rested my forehead on my knees, and let the tears fall quietly. Not because I was weak, but because I had just learned the truth. A truth I'd been trying to avoid my whole life. I was on my own. I sat there on that cold hospital floor longer than I probably should have. But in that moment, time didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the weight in my chest. My daughter, my whole world, was fighting to live behind that wall, and the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally just hung up the phone to finish decorating for a cat. I wish I could say I was surprised. But I wasn't. This wasn't the first time my parents let me down. It just hurt more this time because I had hoped, just for once, they'd show up when it counted. Growing up, I always knew I wasn't the favorite. My brother Kevin was the golden child. He didn't have to ask for attention. It was handed to him like a birthday gift every single day. Straight B's? He got ice cream. 1 soccer goal? They threw a dinner party. I brought home straight A's, worked part-time, and even helped around the house, but all I ever heard was, "Don't make a big deal about it." When I cried after my first heartbreak at 16, my mom didn't hold me or even sit beside me. She looked up from her gardening magazine and said, "You're too sensitive. Toughen up, sweetheart." Dad added, "The world doesn't slow down for dramatic people." That line stayed with me like a shadow. Too sensitive, dramatic, needy. They always had a label ready for me. Never just ours. I tried for years to win their approval. I chose a sensible degree in accounting instead of pursuing writing like I wanted. I never dyed my hair a wild color, never came home late. I followed the rules, their rules. But no matter how quiet or perfect I tried to be, I was always too much or not enough. By the time I got pregnant with Emma, I wasn't even surprised by their reaction. Single mothers make hard lives for children, my dad muttered, staring at the newspaper. You're throwing your future away, Mom said with a shake of her head. They didn't ask about the father, didn't offer help, didn't even come to the hospital when Emma was born. They sent flowers. Cheap ones. The tag still had a clearance sticker on it. But Emma, oh, she changed everything. The moment I held her, I knew. This little person didn't care if I was too emotional or too loud or too broken. To her, I was just Mom. I was her safe place, her world. And in return, she became mine. We built our life together, just the two of us. I worked long hours doing bookkeeping for small businesses, sometimes late into the night after Emma went to sleep. I packed lunches with little notes. I sewed Halloween costumes. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that made everything feel full. Still, somewhere deep down, I kept a little space open for them. For the idea that one day my parents might come around. That one day they'd knock on my door and say, "We were wrong. You're a good mother. We're proud of you." But that day never came. And after today I realized it never will. When I told them Emma needed surgery, when I begged, not for myself but for their granddaughter, and they told me they were too busy setting up a birthday cake for a cat, that little space I'd kept open inside me just closed. I thought about all the times they canceled plans with us because they were redoing the living room or going on a cruise with Kevin. I remembered Emma sitting on the porch in a dress she picked out herself, holding a handmade card that said, "Happy birthday, Grandpa," only to hear that they forgot they had dinner reservations. She used to ask why they never came around. I used to lie and say they were busy. But now even I couldn't pretend anymore. The truth was so sharp, it felt like it cut through years of denial. My parents loved things. They loved appearances. They loved Kevin. But me. I was just inconvenient. And yet here I was at my lowest, still hoping they'd choose me. They didn't. The one time I needed them, really needed them, they turned their backs with a smirk and a joke. All for a cat. I stood up slowly, wiped my face and took a deep breath. My daughter was still fighting and she needed me strong, not shattered. I wasn't going to let the past break me again. Because now I finally saw the truth. I had one real family. And she was lying in that hospital room waiting for me. I left the hospital that night with trembling legs and blurry eyes. I didn't even know where I was going, just that I had to find a way. The doctor said they couldn't wait much longer. The surgery had to happen within hours. And I didn't have the money. I didn't have anyone. I went straight to the garage and stared at my old car. A rusted, tired thing I'd kept for memories more than anything. It was the first car I bought after Emma was born. I used to take her to daycare in it, singing silly songs along the way. But right now, those memories wouldn't save her life. Money would. So I took the title, drove down to a used dealership and sold it for whatever they offered. It wasn't much. But it was something. Still not enough. Back home, I looked down at my hand, the thin gold band that had stayed with me long after the man who gave it was gone. I took it off slowly, like peeling off another layer of hope, and drove to the pawn shop. The man behind the counter barely looked at me. He just weighed it, typed on his machine and slid a few bills toward me. That was it. 10 years of memories, reduced to a number. I felt hollow. But I had no time to feel. I called everyone I could think of. Old coworkers, a college friend I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Most said sorry. Some didn't pick up. One person though. Mrs. Linda, my next-door neighbor. She was in her 70s, always feeding stray cats and humming to old records. I never thought she had much, but when I told her what was happening, her voice cracked. She said, "I'll bring what I have. It's not a lot, but no mother should be alone in this." That night she brought me an envelope and a warm sandwich. I took the money with shaking hands. I couldn't even speak. Just hugged her tight like a daughter would a mother, the kind I never really had. By the time I got back to the hospital, my eyes were burning and my legs barely moved. But we made it. The surgery went ahead. I sat in that stiff hospital chair all night, clutching Emma's favorite stuffed bear to my chest. I didn't sleep. I just watched her chest rise and fall, whispering every prayer I knew and making up new ones in between. I would have traded places with her in a heartbeat if it meant she wouldn't have to go through this. Every beep from the machine made me jump. Every time a nurse walked in, my breath hitched. But slowly the hours passed. Morning light started to slip through the blinds and I saw her little fingers twitch. And then finally, her eyes fluttered open. She looked so small in that big hospital bed with wires and tape all around her. But she smiled just a little. Her lips dry, voice like a whisper, but the words hit me harder than anything ever had. Did Grandma come? I felt something break inside me. I turned away for a second because I didn't want her to see the tears falling. I wiped them quickly and turned back with the softest smile I could fake. They sent prayers, baby, I whispered, brushing her hair back gently. She nodded, too tired to say anything more, and drifted back to sleep. I sat back down in that chair and finally let the tears fall. I cried quietly, the kind of crying that doesn't make noise, just pours out like a flood you can't stop. Because even after everything, Emma still hoped they would show up. She still believed in the kind of love I had long given up on. And that broke me in a way I wasn't ready for. But even through the heartbreak, I felt something else. Something stronger. Determination. I wasn't going to let her grow up thinking she wasn't worthy of love. I wasn't going to let her believe she had to chase people who didn't care. I would be enough. I had to be enough. Because I was all she had. And honestly, she was all I needed. In that moment, I made myself a promise. I would raise her with love so fierce she'd never have to ask if she mattered again. I'd give her every ounce of strength I had, even if it meant losing everything else. Because when everyone else walked away, we still had each other. And that was everything. The days that followed were slow and heavy. Emma was healing, and that was all that mattered. But deep inside there was a hole I couldn't patch. A silence that echoed louder than any noise. My parents. Not a single call. No text. No knock at the door. Nothing. For weeks. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap, only to crash again when it was a pharmacy reminder or a spam message. I wasn't expecting grand gestures. Just something. A small, "How's she doing?" would have meant the world. But I got nothing. Emma kept asking if they'd come. I would smile and say maybe next week. Maybe they're busy. But deep down I knew. They weren't coming. Not until they needed something. And I was right. It was a bright Saturday afternoon, and I was folding laundry in the living room while Emma dozed on the couch. Her teddy bear still tucked under her arm like armor. The doorbell rang and my heart skipped. When I opened the door, I froze. There they were. My parents. My mother stood with a potted plant in one hand, smiling like we'd just seen each other yesterday. My dad held a box of store-bought cake, chocolate with pink frosting. The words "Get well soon" were scrawled on it like an afterthought. Surprise. Mom said, her voice syrupy. I stared at them stunned. Not angry. Not sad. Just hollow. Thought we'd drop by and see our little warrior, Dad added, stepping in without waiting for an invite. They walked in like nothing had happened. My mother looked around and said, "Oh, you finally moved the old couch. Good choice, dear. This room feels more open now." I didn't say a word. Emma woke up to their voices and smiled, sitting up slowly. "Grandma," she said, eyes wide. "Grandpa." They walked over, hugging her gently and handing her the plant. "We brought you this little guy," Mom said. "Plants help with recovery, you know." Then she added like she couldn't help herself, "And I told Mr. Whiskers you were getting better. He wore his new bow tie all week in your honor." I blinked. Mr. Whiskers. The cat. My child was in surgery and they were dressing up a cat. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. For a few minutes they sat and made small talk. My dad praised Emma's bravery. My mom showed her pictures of the cat's birthday decorations. Pink streamers, a cake shaped like a fish, and a little party hat. They laughed like it was a sitcom. I sat there stiffly, nodding when needed but mostly silent. Then my dad leaned forward casually like he was commenting on the weather. "So, we've been working on something. A little investment project," he said. "Small business loan opportunity. Great returns. But they need a co-signer. You know how these things are. And your credit score is good." I didn't respond. Mom jumped in with a soft laugh. "It's nothing major. Just paperwork. Your name here and there. Oh, and if you could transfer a bit from your savings, just temporarily, we'd return it by fall." My mouth opened but no sound came out. They smiled. Like we were still one big happy family. Like they hadn't ignored me when I was crying in a hospital hallway begging for help. Like they hadn't left me to sleep on a plastic chair while their granddaughter lay hooked to machines. I stood up slowly. "You're here," I said, "because you need money?" They looked at each other as if confused by the question. Dad laughed lightly. "Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. Of course we came to see Emma. But since we're here, we thought we could discuss." No, I said. It came out calm. Too calm. I'm not signing anything. I'm not giving you a cent. My mother's face stiffened. We're still family, she said, her tone colder now. We supported you for years. You can't be petty over one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding? I asked, my voice shaking now, not with sadness but rage. Emma almost died. I called you crying, begging. You said you were busy decorating a house for a cat. She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. You didn't even check if she made it. For weeks. And now you come in with cake and fake smiles, asking for money like it's nothing. Dad stood up, looking offended. Watch your tone. We're still your parents. I stared at him, and for the first time in my life I said it aloud. No. You're not. They blinked. You may have raised me, but you've never been parents. You chose pride in pets and paint colors over your own blood. No. Now you need me. I walked to the door and opened it. You can leave. Take your plant. Take your cake. And take your fake apologies. They didn't move at first. But something in my eyes must have told them I meant it. Slowly they gathered their things. Before stepping out, Mom turned and said, "You'll regret this one day." I looked her dead in the eye. I already did. For years. And then I shut the door. I stood there, breathing slowly, trying to steady the storm that had built inside me. After everything they said, after everything they had not done, my heart should have been screaming. But it wasn't. It was calm. That kind of calm that comes after you've cried so much. There's nothing left but truth. "I'll make some tea," I said quietly. They were still standing in the living room, holding that ridiculous cake and potted plant, unsure whether they were welcome anymore. I walked into the kitchen without waiting for an answer. As I boiled water and reached for the chipped mugs in the corner cabinet, I let the silence hang thick in the air. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done. I poured the tea and placed the cups on the coffee table like a polite stranger hosting distant guests. My father cleared his throat. My mother picked at the frosting box nervously, avoiding my eyes. Just then I heard the creak of the stairs. My son Adam walked down, barefoot, his hair still messy from sleep. He was 12 now. Not a little boy anymore. But not yet old enough to carry the weight of what life had taught him. He rubbed his eyes and looked around. "Why are they here?" I paused. "They just came to check on us," I said carefully, setting down the sugar jar. He stepped into the room and stood by the couch, looking at my parents with steady, quiet eyes. He glanced at the cake, then at the plant, and then at their faces. There was something about his presence that shifted the air. My father tried to smile. "Hey there, champ," he said, reaching for some fake cheer. "We heard you've been helping a lot while your sister was in the hospital." Adam didn't smile. He just nodded once. Then he said something I will never forget. "Grandma. Grandpa." His voice was calm, polite even, but it had a weight behind it that no child should have had to carry. "When my sister almost died, you were too busy throwing a birthday party for a cat." The words sliced through the room like a blade. My mother's face went pale. My father blinked and looked down at his tea. Adam kept going, his voice still steady. Not shouting. Not crying. Just speaking truth. "Mom didn't sleep for days. She sold her car. She sold her wedding ring. I saw her cry in the bathroom so Emma wouldn't see." He looked directly at them. "And now you want her to sign something? To give you money? Maybe ask Muffin for help. He's the one you cared about." My hand stopped mid-stir. I didn't look at my parents, I didn't have to. The silence said it all. Their hands literally trembled. My father's cup rattled against the saucer. My mother sat down slowly, her eyes suddenly full of shame she couldn't hide anymore. I had never seen them speechless before. They were always the ones talking over me, brushing my feelings aside, making me feel small. But now it was a child's voice that had revealed their truth. They didn't say a word. Not one. They just sat there frozen like statues in a room where time had stopped. Adam turned to me, walked over and sat beside me on the couch. I pulled him into a soft hug, pressing my cheek against his hair. I didn't have to say anything. Neither did he. We just sat together, mother and son, strong in a way they could never be. After a long, painful silence, my mother finally stood up. Her voice was dry, cracked. "We should go." She didn't wait for my response. My father followed her, eyes on the floor. They didn't take the cake. They didn't take the plant. They left with nothing. And I didn't feel empty. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is silence. And a 12-year-old boy who knows the truth. After they left that day, I sat in the same spot for what felt like hours. The untouched tea had gone cold. The cake still sat on the counter, its bright pink frosting now a bitter reminder of where their love had always been misplaced. I didn't throw it away right then. I just left it there, like they had left me when I needed them most. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't pick up the phone to tell them how much they hurt me. I just let the silence speak. There's a strange kind of peace that settles in when you finally stop expecting anything from the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. I stopped asking why a long time ago. That day I stopped asking anything. I focused on what mattered. My children. Emma was getting stronger every day. Her laugh was coming back and her cheeks had that glow again. Every time she held my hand, I remembered those nights by her hospital bed when I prayed so hard I thought my heart would give out. And Adam, my sweet boy. His strength didn't come from harshness or rebellion. It came from truth. And he spoke it when I couldn't. We went back to our little routines. School drop-offs. Grocery store runs. Quiet Sunday mornings with pancakes. I sold what was left of the jewelry. Took a side job in the evenings. Bit by bit we rebuilt. No fairy tales. No dramatic transformation. Just slow, steady healing. My parents never called again. They didn't send a letter. Didn't message. Didn't ask about Emma's recovery or about Adam's school. They just disappeared. But you know what? I didn't miss them. Because I had already spent a lifetime missing the version of them I never had. It's strange how letting go of someone can feel like losing a weight you didn't even realize you were carrying. For years I thought maybe if I did more, said less, gave more, shrunk more, they'd finally see me. Finally love me like they loved their parties, their pets, their decorations. But no amount of shrinking could make me small enough for their shallow hearts. I used to envy people with warm childhood memories, with mothers who held them close and fathers who stood up for them. I used to think I missed out. Now I see it differently. I got to become the mother I never had. I got to break the cycle. I got to raise children who know their worth, who speak up, who see love as something you show, not just say. And for that I'm grateful. I still walk by their street sometimes when I take the long way home. Their house looks the same. The perfect yard, the fancy porch, the seasonal decorations. But it doesn't sting anymore. It just looks empty. Not in size. In soul. I've learned that not all families are meant to stay in your life. Some are meant to teach you hard, painful lessons. Lessons about strength, boundaries, and truth. And when those lessons come wrapped in silence and pain, you don't fight them. You grow from them. Now when I tuck Emma in at night, when Adam leans his head on my shoulder after a long day, I don't feel broken anymore. I feel whole. That is everything I ever needed. I became. And if you're listening to this, maybe you felt that kind of hurt too. Maybe someone you loved made you feel invisible, unworthy, forgotten. Please hear me when I say this. You are not the problem. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. Sometimes, people show you their truth in the ugliest ways. Let them. Let them reveal who they really are. Just don't forget what they taught you. And don't ever let them make you feel small again.